Hey guys, this is Press Any Button. We are back with another tutorial in Unity. We're going to continue with our run and gun series, and today we're just going to do something really simple, really quick, but effective in the presentation of our game. And that is to, apply animations to our melee enemy. And this is also going to involve being able to figure out how to flip our enemies, so when they follow us it doesn't look weird with them moving backwards towards us. Okay, so I'm just going to jump straight into things. You can see that I've set it up. I've got our melee pursuit character here, and we can see how the animator is set up. And we're just going to run it back, and I'll give a quick explanation of some of the things that I did. So here I have a couple of animations. So I have my idle animation, hit, alert, run. So these are animations that we'll be using later, but we're going to be focusing on idle and run today. So it's been a little bit. I'll give a bit of a refresher on how we create new animations. I go to this drop down where it has my list of animations, and I go to create new clip. And then I call my clip anything, and once I've got the name for my clip, I simply just save it in a proper folder. So that folder will be found under our assets. We should have made an animations folder a little earlier, and I've got two just because I've got one to demonstrate and I've got one to actually do things with. We're going to go over to our sprites. You should have sprites for your enemy character, and we've already cut these sprites up, and all that's left to do is stick them in our animation window right here. So I'm just going to shift and select everything, and then we're just going to drag it over to here. Then I got my little nodes that I can play around with, because if you see I do that, we can't even see the frames of our animation properly. It's just really not good looking. So I've set it up in a particular way where I've spaced these out by about 2 of these bars, which is 0.1 of a, I don't want to say a second because our frame rate isn't 60 frames per second. If we were at 60 frames per second, I think, then it would be 0.1 of a second. But anyway, skipping every other bar is what we're sort of going for here. And then it's important to make sure that we actually have our frames of animation in the right order. You can see here, so this is actually my final frame of animation. So I want that over there. I think this is my first frame. I want that back there. This is either the second or third. Yeah, so that's the second frame. So it can stay there. Third frame can stay there. Fourth frame, I'm going to drag over to here. I recommend using a mouse for this, guys. A trackpad is a nightmare. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste this first frame so that it's a little prolonged, the duration at which we see it. Because I didn't make that frame for us to not see it. I made that frame to use it. So we got 2 copies of that first frame at the last bit of our animation. We can get all complex and things with these animations, but for now I'm just going to keep it at that. In fact, I'll probably just jump back to the other animation that I had, which was my melee run here, which looks a lot nicer. I spent a little bit more time on it and made it a little bit more complicated, but those are all things that you guys can do in your own time. Just thought I'd demo this again. Okay, so how can we link all this together? How can we actually get our melee character to look like it's moving? We've done the animation, and now it's time to jump on over to Visual Studio to do some coding. So we're here in Visual Studio, and I'm going to start off with what we've done, referencing the animation itself, just the animation and not the flip function. The flip function is something we'll talk about in a second. So I made a reference to the animator, so animator anim. Anim equals get component animator, so we have the animator right there, we can use it. And then I go to void update, and we have anim.setFloatSpeed equals mathf absolute move direction. So you'll recognize some of this from our player movement script. That's completely fine because we can reuse these assets to make sure that we're working as efficiently as possible. Now in our other script, our player movement script, I have anim.setFloat, speed, mathf, absolute. And the float that I'm using here is actually a float that works with us getting input on the horizontal axes. So what do we have that's a float that can be measured on the horizontal axes? Well, we're not really using or referencing the horizontal axes because we're not actually playing as this character. But the closest thing that we do have is this float move direction.x. So what we do is we swap out move for move direction x. And I very much recommend that you just copy and paste these lines just to make sure that everything's consistent, that you don't get any like errors and then you're stuck for like 5 minutes just doing something useless when you could have just had it all in front of you to begin with. So that does it for our actual animation. If I jump back to Unity, it's going to come up with a little error at the bottom, not for me, but for you it'll probably come up with a little error that's saying the speed float isn't being used. So while we have our melee pursuit character selected, we go to animator, and you may not have anything here yet, and we're going to make a new parameter by hitting that plus, and then it's going to be a float, and then you type in speed exactly as you typed it in your script, or whatever word you used for it. You could have used flubber, but you got to type in flubber right here. Alright, now let's continue with the flip function. So we have a bool facing right equals true, nothing in void awake, and then we go straight to void update. So we've got all these if statements that we've taken from our player movement script, so you just copy, paste that in. And then we're going to use move direction, we're going to use that same float again in place of move. And that's pretty much all you got to do in void update. And then for the actual flip function, we go to our player movement script again, and then we go to void flip, we copy that, and then we paste it. Make sure you don't give yourself a passing error by pasting it outside of these brackets here. Paste it inside, just as any other sort of void function thingy. And you should be good to go. There's nothing else that we have to swap out here. Once you've done all that, make sure that you save your script and then return to Unity. And I've gone ahead, obviously, but let me just get rid of a couple of things. So you'll see that you have your animations there and they're ready. I'm just going to delete that, and you can use them. But how are we going to use them? Well, in the same way that we've always used them. So I'm going to right click, make transition, and then I'm going to select that transition. The list is empty. I hit that plus, I say greater than a particular value. So you know what, let's do 0.1 because I'd like to show you guys something. So if our speed is greater than 0.1, then our character is going to switch into this run animation, hopefully. And then we make another transition and we say in that transition, if our speed is less than 0.1, we're going to go straight back to how we started. So let's open it up and take a look. Side note, so we've given positive values for each of these transitions, which isn't going to be a problem because we use mathf absolute. So that's going to give us values that are absolute, values that are positive. It's going to tell us you are traveling at speed 10. Not relative to the world space, so it's not going to say you're traveling at -10 speed. It is like if you're traveling left, you're at speed 10. If you're traveling right, you're at speed 10. So we've already sorted out that problem before we've encountered it. And now we can jump in and play our game. Okay, so our character's pursuing us, but as you can see, there's something just a little weird. They're not transitioning with their animations, and you know, we're wondering why is that happening. Now you can see on the bottom I've got my melee pursuit still selected, so I can see what's happening, what speed is being measured, and the speed is 1.3, so they're still traveling over a speed of 0.1 because we made our transitions that it would only transition back when it's at a speed of less than 0.1, but it never reaches that mark even when it's colliding with us. So what we can do is we can actually, now we'll have to redo this outside of the game, but you can already see the impact that it's had there. We have our idle animation working for us, and then eventually it starts to go into that run animation. So it's a little bit more organic with the movement. It's a little bit more fluid. And that's kind of what we want from our game. So we can go out and then we can edit all of this. Oh, it's stuck. That's new. And now that we have that edited, we're going to deselect has exit time, because you would have noticed there was a little bit of a lag on the transitions there. And then we're going to go back, play our game, and hopefully there we are. Our enemy pursues us, so we jump over them. Naturally they go back into sort of an idle animation, and we're going to change this anyway, but it's kind of helpful if you want to do like a different thing with it, and if you were just kind of confused as to why you weren't getting your beautiful idle animation back after all of the hard work and effort you put into it. Anyway guys, that has been another short tutorial from me on this channel. Press any button if you like what you saw, comment, like, subscribe, all of these things. Keep connected, and until next time, just press on and keep creating. I'll see you later guys.